Is abortion a death cult? Let's find out on Revolution Against Evolution. Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host Rich Gear here, and well, Doug, this has been the hot topic for 50 years, and it continues to be so. Even among Christians, there's still a lively debate, a lot of disagreements, but it seems to me, as a creationist, as a Christian, you can really only come down on one side of it. And tonight we're going to talk about various things, but Doug, you got a lot of bullet points here, and the science behind politics is not even the politics; it's the moral issue that we're going to talk about tonight. And I guess I like what your first evolutionists believe that man is entirely an advanced animal, and I guess that's where the line of demarcation really begins. If you think about it, Doug, creationists believe that we were created in God's very own image, and unlike even the angels, we have a unique place in the creation, and there is a creation. Number one, number two, it's not a naturally evolving product of random chance elements coming together in haphazard form over billions and millions and billions of years. So anyway, Doug, let's start with that.
Well,
What
the
do you got?
abortion is really rooted in the creation evolution issue. If God is creator and he is the one who put us together and designed us from the beginning, then we are distinct from the animal kingdom. We're special. We're created in his own image, according to the scriptures. And so to end the life of a baby in the womb, that is a major issue, a major problem, because you're really choosing to murder somebody in this particular case.
Yeah, and of course the first thing that come out the deflection is, well, that's your opinion. To me, it's not really a baby yet until it comes to a certain point in life. In fact, now some of them are going all the way up to right before you're born. It's still not really anything but a bunch of fetal cells, a bunch of tissue. It's not really a human being yet. I mean, and of course, there's even now it keeps they never the line once you move the goalpost, these people will continue to move the goalposts. And let's face it, human beings have notably sacrificed babies for centuries. It's nothing new, and this is the same thing at all. But basically, I think one of the arguments I heard and it's really interesting. I call it a bait and switch. That we use the term fetus as opposed to baby. Okay, and fetus just means little one. I mean, that's all it means. Like, from what I understand in Latin, it means little one. But most people will know, no, fetus. Well, that's something not alive yet. That's something. Not really a real person yet, distinct from the mother. And those are some of the other arguments we'll talk about tonight as well. But it's gone along with the idea that everything in our world is based on naturalistic processes. There's no divine element or spark involved in it. And of course, that's where the line begins right away. It's right there that there's a divine spark in humanity. And I think instinctively we all know that. There's the old song, there's a God-shaped hole in all of us. We instinctively know that, but we have an ability, a propensity, if you will, to bury our head in the sand, so to speak, and try to ignore it. It's like the little kid who says, "La la 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 la, I can't hear you, I can't hear you," or the other one, you can't see me." And what's really is everybody can see you, but you can't see anything else. You're in this little bubble that's insulating your own preconceived notions because you don't want to take responsibility for your actions. Is really what it amounts to.
We are responsible to our creator God.
And that's
If there
that's
is a creator
untenable.
God, then we are responsible to him. He sets the rules. He's the one who has given us life. And if we violate those rules, we have consequences to pay, and people do not want to acknowledge that or to deal with that. And I take a look at what happened in ancient times. There
Yes.
was an idol that they would worship called Moloch. Moloch was this huge entity that they heated the arms of Moloch to fiery red hot, and then to appease Moloch, they would put their babies in the arms of Moloch, and they'd be fried to death. And that was their way to appease this demonic entity to that they worshipped, and they thought that this would bring them they would bring them good crops or something of that sort. But that
Crops, fertility, success, yeah, all the material things. Yeah, that's right.
and that's basically what is happening with the abortion is that you have free sex where you are violating the marriage covenant, and in that they you conceive a child out of wedlock, out of the commitment that God has based what your life should be like and between a man and a woman. And so what happens with that is then they have the man abandons the woman, and the woman has to deal with this pregnancy. I think this is what the women complain about, and this is a man's responsibility. If he impregnates a woman, he has a real duty to God, and I used to work for the child support enforcement system in the state of Michigan, and it was not a very pleasant place to work. But because you could see what was happening with this little artificial fix that the government put in it, that they had the man pay child support to support the woman who had the baby, but they think that they're going to actually get out of this by killing the baby in the womb, and that is a tough situation. I remember there was one fellow who had 12 child support orders with 12 different women in the same apartment
Oh,
complex.
oh, really? Wow.
And so this is irresponsibility that we're dealing with people, and people don't. If they people don't think there is a God, well, then they think that they're not going to be judged for what they do. They think that they're anything if they're going to obey any laws. It's the laws that they make up in themselves, and or you have a bunch of people who agree with each other, and they will come together and say, well, this is what the law is, but there is no appeal to any higher moral authority, which who God is, and so that is what is happening in our society is that they have abandoned the respect and the worship of God for consensus opinion of what is right and wrong. And I think that's what has happened. We know as creationists who worship God and know Him intimately that God has formed us in His image, and that gives us purpose for our life. If you are abandoning your child in your womb, you're abandoning the purpose that God has created you for.
So it's interesting, Doug, that you know the enemy of our souls, the devil, if you will, and his minions, have been playing the same game for years and years. And like I say, when you talk about sacrificing, whether you believe in gods or a god, But if you don't believe in the true God, you end up debauching yourself with human slaughter. Usually, what happens is you end up with it becomes a death cult, if you will. Abortion is really part of the death cult,
And
and
what
it's
it
not,
is,
yeah,
the death cult is the survival of the fittest.
yeah, and
Death in the evolutionist mind is what drives the change in the evolution, and overall, it is the ultimate goal of evolution is death. You kill off the unfit, and the fit is what survives. And
sure, like we used to say that the main difference, if you look at it from in a biblical perspective, a Christian perspective, from man came death. And but evolutionary is from death comes man. In other words, through death and extinction and nature red in tooth and claw, all of these things, survival of the fittest, as you said. Basically, we evolve upward. All these things. The scripture is very clear that we were created perfect, and yet we were able to, with the ability to sin, and we chose sin, and there was judgment, subjected to death, physical as well as spiritual, with the hope of redemption. So that's one thing I was talking about. That Doug, we have as human beings, people do not understand. We have God has been given us a position where we have a redemptive arc. The angels don't have this. The cherubim, the seraphim, whatever creatures God has created besides man, do not have the redemptive arc, and we do. But you have to acknowledge, you submit to God and His rules, and then the devil will flee from you. If not, then what happens? You have death cults like Moloch, and some people have likened even the abortion. A lot of the abortions that when they put them in the acid baths or whatever they've done, really humane things. Sometimes they cut them up and they do all kinds of horrible butchering things. But they liken that to the fiery. Throw them in the fire. That's they literally burn these babies in the womb up, and that's what happens. A lot of times, it's the biggest services are some of these places that actually show people what is done during abortions, and many women decide not to go through with that. Thank you, Lord, for
they get
that.
a
But
get an
still,
ultrasound sound, and that was Nancy Kujawa's ministry with on the campus. She gave the people who had unplanned pregnancies a picture of their baby in the womb, and as 80%. And 80% of people who get this decide not to go through with abortion. I have a few things that Cookie has written down here. So, she said
okay.
that the womb should be the safest place for a baby. And but most people do an abortion for their own convenience, for their own selfish convenience. And she was talking here about abortion pills. Girls can get these online without parents' consent. And there's two pills. One pill kills the baby, and the other one pushes it out.
Oh, yeah.
And the girls can lose it in the toilet, or and many girls bring the dead baby to a pro-life clinic, hoping they can restore the dead baby. And there's but this is a national sin that has been just going on for all these 50 years, that since 1973, when the Roe versus Wade took place. 60 million babies. There's a whole generation of people who are lost because this is all has happened. One thing, let's tie it back to evolution, because there was a fellow in the 1800s. His name was Ernst Haeckel, and
Yeah.
he put together uh, a sequence of drawings that he made of the embryo going through all these different uh, animal stages. He said that each of the embryos resemble different creatures in the evolution stages.
Yeah. Isn't that the one, the embryonic recapitulation?
Yes,
Isn't that how they go? Yeah.
it recapitulates evolution, and it goes through a pig stage, through a fish
Right.
stage with gill slits and all these different things. And it was totally
I,
fraudulent.
Wasn't the phrase ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny? Isn't that the sort of the meme that they used to use or whatever?
Yes.
Which means, yeah, the whole birth cycle, the embryonic, when you're going through one cell uh, existence, then the multi-cell, then you're going through all these different animals from fish to amphibians to reptiles to mammals to
Mhm.
humans or whatever is all about that. And the fact of the matter is, we've talked about this on our show, Doug, several times over the years, and those drawings are proven to be fraudulent. They're proven to be fraudulent nearly 100 years ago, probably now. But
Mhm.
I still remember learning some of that in my textbooks when I was a kid. Many years after they were known to be fraudulent, they were still put in textbooks.
It
And
was
so
used
this
in
scandal,
the Roe versus Wade decision. That was the argument that they used,
that is one of the arguments. Yes.
and that was, you can tie it back to the evolutionary thinking, the non-God thinking, the atheist thinking, where you believe that you're just an animal evolved from the slime, and you start out as a single cell, and you go through all these different stages, and finally you become a human, but you don't become a human until you're born, according to them. And
Yeah, but even now, Doug, it's gone even farther than that. There are places in the world. I'm not sure. I think it's the Netherlands or someplace like that. And there's other places where even here in the States, I've read articles where people, even after you're born, they think if you don't want it, that you have the right to kill it. You know,
yeah,
because the argument, well, they can't live by themselves. And I said, you take that argument to its logical conclusion, kids can't support themselves till they're like what 15, 16, maybe 13. I don't know what it is. So you can kill them up to the age of 12 or 13. I'm saying if you take that argument to its logical conclusion, there's no restriction not only before the womb or before they're born, but even after they're born. That's called euthanasia. But they would do that. And of course, when you get older and you can't support yourself, you become infirm and aged. That gives an excuse on the other end of the spectrum to kill people off. These people do not understand that when you open the doors to this stuff, this kind of non-God thinking, it opens the doors to the father the father of lies, who is a murderer and a thief and a liar from the very beginning. That's the devil, and that's what these people don't understand. They are in league with him, and they perform the fruits of their actions belie who their father really is. And one of the fruits is killing babies in the womb, but it goes even beyond that. It could go, like I say, way beyond even being born. There are people talking about that. They have the right. You should have the right to kill your kid up to a certain. They keep pushing, Doug. Before it was like, okay, first quarter, first trimester, then the second, then all the 9 months. Well, then first 2 months after they're born, and then the first 2 years after they're born. Where does it end? And people say, oh, you say it's going to be the domino effect. I said, yeah, you know why we say the domino effect? Because there's always a domino effect. When something like that happens, they keep pushing perversity and evil as far as they can push it. And we keep putting. He tried to draw a line. It's like, no, I'm sorry. We almost have to be on the offensive. When the Bible says the gates of hell will not prevail against you, gates are defensive fortifications. We should be on the attack. I don't mean we're killing people or hurting, but I mean with the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. We should be speaking out about these kinds of things. And I know people are, but it's really hard when you have a culture that is sold into a cult of death, and that's what it is. Look, you got even in the scriptural point, we know in Genesis, he created man in his own image, male and female. He created him. That's another thing, Doug. People argue whether it's 57 genders or whether, as I forget, there's two sexes, male and female. Period. End of story. Okay, but you've
I
got
don't know. None of them work the same way. A lot of the extra ones, the genders that they define. Um,
no,
if you
you're
go to
right.
the Creation Museum, they have an excellent display called "Fearfully and Wonderfully Made,"
Yes,
and you and I were the first ones to see this new exhibit.
it was really good. Yes,
And it shows, at the moment of fertilization, there is a flash of light that occurs. and you can see that happening in animation, and how the placenta around the baby just feeds the baby and does it. The placenta would be a study we could do some other time because it just is a very complex organ that occurs just for the baby while at the time you um, it lives in the womb, and it's a wonderfully designed instrument. But at fertilization, the zygote has 23 pairs of chromosomes, which contains information for gender, eye color, and your appearance. The heart starts beating at just a few weeks after fertilization. And so at this point in time, the woman doesn't even know that she's pregnant. And
Huh.
and then the eyes and the ears and the arms and legs, they appear after 5 weeks. And brain waves after 6 weeks. And but you have all these different things that occur. And in this exhibit, you can see the development of the embryo, and you see that it's totally human. It doesn't resemble at all Haeckel's drawings that he has
No,
created
they
over.
were fraudulent. Yes, they were fake. Well, look at this. I want to read this scripture here, which is kind of the creationist. Christians use it a lot, but I think it's worthwhile to revisit it. When Jeremiah the prophet was called, and it says when the word of the Lord came to me, which was Jeremiah, saying, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations." And so what I'm saying is he was known, and it's not merely because he was a prophet, although he was called as a prophet even before, but when he was being formed, God knows every one of us as he formed us, and he's the one causing to be formed in the mother's womb. And the thing about it is, because we live in a fallen, broken world, some of those uh, babies, those fetal people, they abort themselves before they're born. This is God's sovereign thing in a broken world. I don't really know what happens to their souls. I had a guy one time, Doug. He had a son, and he had what's called happy puppet syndrome. I don't know if you know what that is, but he's kind of he basically had a mental or brain damage when he was being born. And ever see they're very happy all the time. They kind of walk around on the balls of their feet and they kind of have their arms kind of up. They're kind of like they kind of walk sort of like they look like a marionette in a way sometimes. But he was worried that he couldn't be saved because he couldn't make he couldn't choose or call God by himself. I says, God knows him before he was born. Number one. Number two, who are you and I to say because he can't communicate it to the world, that he is more connected to God than even you and I are. Okay, we don't know any of that stuff. But the point of it is, his soul is fully formed and complete despite the body being damaged. So even in a fallen world, the mercy of God is being revealed, I believe. Okay, but all these things that are being used always start, Doug, from a physical only external way of describing things. And of course, even most of them, as we said, the Ernst Haeckel drawings turn out to be fraudulent. We look at the actual science of it. I like to think there's a flash that happens at the moment of, I don't know, that's almost like the soul being grafted into the physical thing. I don't know whether that's the case, but that would be cool if it was. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. So, Doug, what are some of the other things that we want to
Okay,
point
well,
out?
we can ask the question, does a woman have a right to her own body?
I would say yes, she does, but the baby is not her body. It's a separate entity, but she is housing it. She's like a custodian, And I know people
Well,
say
I would
we're
say
not.
it differently, Rich.
What's
Uh,
that?
I would say that you are not your own. You are bought with a price.
Well, okay, that's true, but many people don't receive that purchase. They restrict or reject that purchase. I'm saying,
Mhm.
and I was being primarily dealing with the natural arguments, basically. The idea these are two separate entities. You are two separate beings. Okay, at that point in
I've
time.
heard people argue that the baby is a parasite.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that is not true. It is something that
By that definition, everyone who is dependent on someone else is a parasite.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't matter. If the kid's 3 years old, he's a parasite.
that's
He
right.
can't live on his own. He'll die
Mhm.
or she'll die, you know?
There,
Um,
there was a book that came out in our generation called The Population Bomb. It
oh boy.
was
By
written
Paul
by,
Ehrlich, yeah,
yeah.
whatever, yeah.
And I think this is something that's really shaped the mentality of our generation is that there's a scarcity of resources for all the different people that are being born. Now, if you go, we took a trip up north this past weekend, and there's miles and miles and miles of trees and open land and forest and uh, places for people to live. And if you live in New York City, maybe you can think of, well, this place is so crowded with people. Well, you haven't been out of the city, and you don't have to go very far to get to the forest from New York City. But
Doesn't
people
there some
like,
of the time go back? Wasn't there a philosopher, was it 1700s, early 1800s, Malthusian or something like that,
yeah,
talking about the resources we're going to run out? I mean, and that was totally proven to be false anyway. His extrapolations turned out to be totally bogus anyway. But it seems to me a lot of it just they take old ideas. Evolution is an old idea. They take those kinds of thoughts and they transcribe them for a modern audience, but it's the same devilish, anti-life type of philosophy all the
well,
time.
it is a death cult. It
And
is.
it's also a selfish one. I got mine, but you can't have yours. There's no real belief or acceptance or embracing, if you will, the idea that we all can help each other and lift each other up. You know what it reminds you of, Doug? Reminds you of that old story of the. I think I read it in Reader's Digest years ago. I may have talked on the show before, and I was fascinated. It's not scriptural in any sense of the word, but the guy gets a vision of both heaven and hell, and he goes to hell first. He sees everybody down there. There's rows of tables of food and all kinds of succulent things to eat, but everyone's starving to death. The reason why is because they got implements to eat with grafted onto the ends of their hands, forks, knives, spoons. And every time they try to pick up food, it's just long enough they can't put the food in their mouth, so it falls off. They're incessantly tortured through their whole. And the guy said, "This is horrible." They're screaming or wailing because they're starving, but they can never die of starvation. So he goes to heaven, but guess what? He sees the same vision up there, rows of tables and food everywhere, but no one's starving to death. They all got the implements grafted on their hands. That's because everyone's feeding each other. Everyone's feeding one another. And I'm going, that reminds me of this thing about this abortion, the idea of doing a lot of stuff. It's about feeding yourself. It's a selfish way of living. It always inevitably leads to death. It leads to destruction. It leads to it's selfishness that basically it's me, mine, and thine, and maybe just me and me, me and me. That's it. And eventually, anybody else who gets in the way, we're going to kill you, or eliminate you, or ignore you, or ostracize you. One thing or the other. So
So either God is creator and judge, or we are on our own. And God is the one who is, we are our own gods. And we choose what is right and wrong based upon our own opinions rather than to appealing to God. And so we have to, if we are believe in God, then we acknowledge Him as Creator and Lord and ruler of our life. And so there's no room for abortion in that scenario.
no.
We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.